Welcome, everyone, to episode 3. My name is David Reed. Thank you so much for sticking around. We just wrapped up with Tony Amendola, and we're going straight into Joseph Mallozzi. This will not normally happen. This was due to a schedule change, so I'm going to have a little bit more time to prep next time. So thank you, Tony, for pinch hitting for Christopher Judge. Again, there was something like perfect about that. And then as well, we now have Mr. Joseph Mallozzi, who was gracious enough to hold on for a minute. So we had to shift things a little bit around. And we're going to get pretty much right into this here. So run of show. So in this particular episode, it's going to be a little bit more standard to the intent of what the show is going to be. Joe and I are going to talk for a little bit. I have a series of questions for him. Then I will bring the guests Q&A in. I do have the form pulled up, so thank you, Summer, Tracy, Ian, and Keith, for all of your hard work here. Those are my moderators. Those guys are amazing. For Tony's, I screwed up on which form we were reviewing. There was something that went wrong. So Tony has already agreed to do another episode. We will launch with that fan Q&A next time around. So I've saved them all. So I appreciate you guys submitting those. But Joe's, I've got ready to go here. The fans, as you submit them, we will go through and discuss those together. Joe and I will have a brief trivia question where we embarrass ourselves. And then any announcements, any questions that you have for me specifically on the structure of the show, I'll give you another piece of wonderful fan art that's submitted and invite you to share the show with your Stargate friends, which I'm going to go ahead and do again right now. So I really appreciate you sticking around for the program. Before we get started with Joe, if you like Stargate and want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal if you click the like button. It really makes a difference with YouTube's algorithm, and will definitely help the show grow its audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. Giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get any of my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. This is key if you plan on watching live, so keep that in mind. Clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next several days on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. I'm not trying to spam everyone with my channel, but it's taking more of the longer form approach and shrinking it down to more bite-sized episodes and more specific topics so that people can share that with one another. So that's all I've got. I hope you enjoy the show. Without further ado, Mr. Joseph Mallozzi. Hello, sir.
David, I rarely say this, but I feel woefully underdressed today.
Well,
is that a clip-on, or is that you? Did you? Very impressive.
It's the real deal. Absolutely. I appreciate you guys being here. You can wear whatever. You can be in your PJs if you want, but I wanted you to know.
I feel very special.
I cannot thank you enough, and I mentioned this to you before we just started. I cannot thank you enough and tell you how much of what it means to be here with you in a first episode of what will hopefully be a series for the next, however long that it takes to get through the content of a show that you helped to create that has changed the lives of, or at least at the very least enhanced the lives of millions of people around the world for the past decade and a half, and who knows how far out it will be into the future. And not just normal programming, but programming that matters to people and programming that helps make them better people. So take it away.
well, thank you to you for doing this. I'm always happy to put in an appearance, but it's great that you're doing this for the fans, and I'm sure they appreciate it as well.
Absolutely, and I'm so thankful that the number of people who have already found us on the web. It's just, we've been up for 7, 8, 9, 10 days, and already we've got almost 1,200 subscribers. I mean,
wow,
it's the drum that you have been beating for years. Stargate is still around, and it deserves to come back in a fourth series, live action series form. Wouldn't you say?
I would say, and I have been saying.
Yeah. Absolutely. You have recently said 5 chevrons locked is what you believe is going on with this potential fourth series that Brad has been pitching to MGM. Can you elaborate on any of that?
Not really. I'm, to be honest with you, not as in the loop as many would assume. It's very much Brad's show, both figuratively and literally. And all we know is what he said. He'd been in talks with MGM, and I know things had kind of moved forward. I know that COVID put a wrench into things, but I'm ever hopeful, and I think the tweet storms that we did helped to remind MGM that the fandom is still out there. The fandom is very much looking forward to new Stargate. The fandom is very much looking forward to new in canon Stargate, which would mean a new Stargate series by Brad Wright. So, hopefully all that hard work pays off. I keep on saying sooner than later.
But hopefully, not later than sooner, or however. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's one of these things. These things take a long time to create. It takes a long time to give birth to a project. It can take development hell. Can last years.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
But hopefully that won't be the case with this. So
hopefully not.
Is it your hope to be part of the production, or will you be cheering Brad on from the sidelines? What's your intent?
I really have no intent and no expectations. I mean, I just would love to see a new Stargate on screen again. I think it would be great, and it would be just great to revisit with all those characters as well. As even just a viewer. So. Like I said, it would be nice, but it all comes down to obviously scheduling and a whole host of other.
So
variables.
It's not a requirement for you that Brad, if the only reason I'm rooting this on is because I want you, I want you to bring me in. No, you love the project. You love the IP. So.
Well, more than anything, I love the IP that Brad and Robert and Jonathan created.
Yes.
And I loved the IP, and I love the possibility of seeing another in-canon series. About as much as I dislike the thought of someone else coming in and just rebooting it and erasing 20 years of TV canon. So. I'm very much a supporter of new Brad Wright Stargate. On the other hand, I will be very much probably a dubious what's the word critic of any attempt to reboot the franchise.
Well, coming from your perspective, and you guys worked on this for years. The meticulous level of detail and effort that you put into creating content that perpetually referenced itself moving forward and gave the fan base an expectation that what I watched before matters to what's coming next. To lift that all away into a new project, I wouldn't necessarily myself have an issue with new Stargate if it weren't to delete everything else, but just be far enough into the future or something like that, where it didn't necessarily matter anymore. It wasn't necessarily stepping on the toes of what you created in the present timeline, for instance. But kind of what I kind of suppose I'm saying is what they did with Star Trek, the alternate reality where we're not deleting anything, we're moving over here to this layer. But if I had my choice, obviously, and that's one of the reasons I have you guys on, I'd want a continuation of yours.
But that is still in canon. I mean, even though in an ideal world you create a new show that allows you to revisit old characters, you could do what you said and create a show that is somehow set in the future, but you're still making use of the rules that were established in SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe. So that is still very much an in-canon show, so far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's not strictly a reboot where, the IP is starting from square one and moving forward again. Yeah, I agree with that. What would you hope to see in a fourth series? What have you guys not done? I mean, obviously disclosure I can think of, but
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's really up to Brad, but I keep saying that obviously the best possible fourth season would be fourth series would be a show that would be a great jumping on point for new viewers. So you don't have to know anything about Stargate, and you essentially join the adventure along with a cast of new characters. And I think that's what you have to do. But that's not to say you can't have some characters from the past playing a supporting role. So, I mean, in an ideal world, it's something like, you know, a show that offers the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And you know, what made Stargate really, I think, resonate with a lot of fans is the fact that it was set in the here and now. It's a contemporary sci-fi rather than a far future sci-fi.
It's about us.
Or a prequel. I'm personally not a huge fan of prequels. So, you know, that's where I land.
I'm not speaking out of school. We had talked a couple of years ago at GateCon for an interview for season 2 of Dialing Home, and I asked him, you know, what did you want to do next? And I don't know what his current plans are, but I can say what he told me was his hope to create some kind of a situation where the Stargate Command units and the Atlantis expedition pooled their resources to save Destiny. And that idea was just that. I mean, I don't know why I hadn't thought of that before. It was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The other two teams, as it were, could come to the rescue. So.
And there's no reason why that couldn't happen in a new series that still focuses on this you know, new team. So
yeah, a longer mission could be happening in the background.
Yeah,
you know, these missions can take years.
Yeah.
So, would you like to see some of the previous sets recreated physically, digitally?
I don't. Again, I mean, I don't really know specifically what you know, sort of what the new show would be. So, I mean, I can't really speak to sets. I don't think. I mean, I can't imagine the show. Starting on Atlantis or starting on Destiny or taking place at the SGC, since I think they shut down Cheyenne Mountain. Unless it was a sort of an all new SGC.
Or that moon base that they were talking about in Continuum.
Possibly.
Right?
I mean, I think you want, you know, something new, something fun, flashy. Absolutely.
I want to sidestep Stargate for a second because I know that there are going to be Dark Matter fans in here. And I have to bring myself up to speed on this aspect of it. Is a fourth season still a possibility somewhere out there?
No, at this point, I would say the one hope to being able to complete the story would be a mini series. So hopefully, like a 6 to 8 to 10 episode mini series. That would be ideal.
Okay. Are you still looking for potential networks that could potentially carry that? Are you actively pitching that to anybody?
At present, I am not actively doing so, but you know, it's something that hopefully will come up in the not too distant future.
Okay, fantastic. Well, keep us in the loop, okay?
I will.
I want to take a step back here in terms of the long view of this arc, the arc that we're about to go on together, the journey that we're about to commence, where we're going through dozens and dozens of the episodes that you have written, hopefully every one of them one by one. But this episode is really about you. It is about your personal heroes and the people who have helped you become the man who you are. And I really want to go back to the beginning. So fans may be like, this isn't the question that I planned on, getting the answer to, but I think that it's relevant when we look at the final result of what's to come. Where were you raised? What did your family do? Who were you as a young man?
I was raised in Montreal. My father was a salesman for a company that manufactured what do they call, space heaters, I guess. And my mother was a daycare director, formerly a minister in the United Church. And so that was my background. And I grew up in Montreal, and I remember, I always used to love to write as a kid, and whenever people would ask me, what do you want to be? And I would tell them I want to be a writer.
Okay.
And my mother would be like, well, that's cute, but no one makes a living being a writer. I mean, you can be a journalist or a lawyer and you can write on the side. So luckily I didn't really follow through on kind of that law career. So, I mean, I got my start in animation and transitioned from animation to live action kind of teen sitcom, a show called Student Bodies. And then I did 1 hour action adventure. And then pretty quickly, Paul and I landed, my former writing partner and I, Paul Mullie, and I landed on Stargate for SG-1's 4th season. At the time, they were looking for new writers. And we wrote a script called Scorched that, passed inspection, I guess. And then we landed for season 4. And, I keep on telling the story where we landed for season 4 with the understanding that we would go 2 seasons. And after season 5, the show would end and we would all go our separate ways.
Boy, that didn't happen.
No, it did not.
And I want to discuss Scorched Earth here in a minute. So there was never any plan for you. You never gave any serious consideration to doing anything else professionally.
Not really. I mean, I enjoyed writing. I honestly thought I would be a novelist. I wrote a book and it was terrible. And Paul advised me to try turning it into a script. And so I learned the script format, which is fairly straightforward. And I adapted it. And my terrible novel became an equally terrible script. But it,
gotta start somewhere, man.
Road. Yeah,
right.
To be honest with you. And I decided that's what I wanted to do, screenwriting, and I applied to like 100 production houses, and I think maybe 6 got back to me and said no thanks, but one, which was an animation company, said, well, if you're interested in writing, you can pitch ideas for upcoming shows, and that's essentially the way it works. You get sent a Bible or a overview of the series, and you pitch ideas, and if they like your idea, then they hire you to write a script. And so my first script was for Richard Scarry's The Busy World of Richard Scarry, a favorite of yours, an animated series. And that was my first sale, and that's how I embarked on my career.
Wow. Okay. And how old were you when that was happening?
It was fairly late, late. I think I was actually, before then, I had an office job. I was actually a director of development for an animation studio. So I want to say like early 30s.
Okay. So you really, okay. So you had gotten into the industry fairly late in the scheme of things. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just remember not to belabor the point, but I have this video of me at 4 years old where my parents hand me a Fisher-Price tape recorder with a recording button on it. And my parents say, his dad's boom box, we just couldn't see him lugging that around anymore. And so that's how I was like, yeah, I got into recording and creating content pretty early. Did anyone in your family write? Or did you just sit down at a notepad one day and just start scribbling?
I used to, I still do love to read. And it really started with comic books. And then, I continued and still continue to read comic books, but my mother got me interested in science fiction, the classics, Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke and Harlan Ellison. And so,
absolutely.
And I would, I remember actually, creating my own super group, super team. And writing little stories for them, and writing, I was a big fan of Ray Bradbury, and in grade 4 writing, these type of, short stories with the cool twist at the end. Which
right, exactly.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Like Foundation, it's absolutely, I read that for the first time just a few years, and I was like, man, that's good. These classics really they hold up for a reason. Did you see Stargate in the theaters?
I did. I remember my writing partner, Paul, calling to say, we have to check out this movie, because we used to do something called Bad Movie Night. And we saw, I think, Barbed Wire and Boxing Helena and Battlefield Earth.
Battlefield Earth.
And our local paper, the viewer, rated it a bomb. And we're like, oh, this is this movie's gonna be
Stargate.
terrible. Yes.
While it's still in the theater.
Yeah. And we went to see it, and we were like, I was actually disappointed because I was expecting a bomb, and it was not a bomb. It was actually, quite good. So that was my first exposure to Stargate.
What hooked you? What hooked you in watching that?
I mean, simply the fact that it's sci-fi, first and foremost.
Right.
I mean, I just have always loved sci-fi, and it's what I think draws audience to the series. This exploration, the action, the adventure, and also kind of that underlying sense of humor that I think is sorely lacking from a lot of science fiction today.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. How old were you when you met Paul? When did you guys meet?
Paul and I met in a creative writing class in college.
So you were students together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Just desk mates, or what was the connection there?
No, we were. We met in a creative writing class, and I think actually we were part of the same D&D group as well.
You played Dungeons and Dragons together.
He played a monk, Cato the monk, and I was
this is fantastic.
My goblin Delphos with the 18 charisma. That's
that's perfect. The
Yeah.
Wyvern Gaming is coming out with the new Stargate role, but that's fantastic. All right. How long did you know each other before you guys were like, we should try something together? Your sensibilities and mine, they connect like Legos.
I mean, I try to think back, maybe like a couple of years, and by that point, I think we co-wrote a feature, a sci-fi feature, and then I went off and got my start in animation, and I think at the time he was thinking of heading off to do a PhD, and I was like, well, why don't you
Really
get into writing animation? And then he got into writing animation as well, and then from there. At the beginning, we didn't really work together, but then we ended up landing a job on a live-action teen sitcom called Student Bodies that ended up shooting in a high school. It was a great time, and we were co-producers. And from there, we went to another show called Big Wolf on Campus, to a show called Lost World, and then quickly we immediately landed on Stargate, and we were there for 12 years.
Yeah, just a little bit of time. So did you did the opportunity to work on Stargate come up before you had seen the series, or did you see the series and say, okay, let's approach that?
I had seen the series. I'd seen an episode called Emancipation, and I was
Catherine
like,
Powers. Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, this series is not for me. I'm just, and my our agent who also represented Robert C. Cooper, co-creator of Atlantis and
Universe,
said, hey, they're looking for writers. Would you guys be interested? And I said to Paul, I don't think I can write this show. I saw this episode, and it's not really. But they had sent scripts, and I ended up reading the scripts, and they were very good and really in
Season
stark
3?
contrast. Yeah.
Okay.
And in stark contrast to the episode I had watched. So we ended up pitching, I think, 5 ideas, and 2 of those ideas they ended up buying, Scorched Earth and Window of Opportunity. Well, actually, Scorched Earth was really the one that got us the gig. So we got on the phone with Brad and Robert, talked through our idea. They gave us some notes. We went out and wrote an outline. We delivered the outline. They sent us notes. And from there, we went to first draft. And based on the strength of our first draft, we were offered staff positions for the shows.
Scorched Earth, the Incarans did it then.
Yeah, they did. Thank you, Incarans.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's interesting, that particular episode, not only is it entertaining, but it's what sci-fi does at its best. It's a moral conundrum. It's a rock and a hard place situation for our team and the people that they're having to deal with. Yeah,
the one, I don't say regret, but I mean, I love the moral conundrum, and the idea we originally pitched was not a happy ending.
Really?
I think Daniel convinces
Lotan.
Lotan to essentially shut down the terraforming process, and so the Incaran stay on the world and the Gadmir perish. I mean, that I think would have been a
ballsy.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I like the episode. I mean, it was our first episode. I was happy with the way it turned out. I just thought the ending was a bit convenient in retrospect.
Really? So if you had a chance to go back and do that, you would have made it a little bit more dark?
I think I would have, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I love that episode, Joe. I don't know how I feel about that. No, I mean, yeah, I suppose it's like, yeah, you know, we researched the database, and that planet was occupied because there are other Incarans there. Oh, what do you say? There are other Incarans? So, we can put them there? You don't expend fuel by traveling through space?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, see, now you're thinking as a writer, and that's the issue. I mean, when I used to go see movies with my ex, she used to hate to see movies with me because I used to pick apart any movie I would go see. And it's the same way it's so hard to watch television and really enjoy a show now, because you sit down as a writer and you think, well, actually, that was convenient. The 3 C's are my pet peeves. So what are they? Coincidence, contrivances, and conveniences.
In
when
writing?
they work, yes. When they work, they're something called result writing. If you want to get out of a situation, coincidentally this happens, or conveniently this happens. You know, it feels undramatic and unearned. So I try to avoid that as much as possible.
Well, I can certainly attest as a fan, you know, my appreciation of the awareness of that. So thank you. Do you recall at all the episodes that you had been sent in script form that had made you turn your head about Stargate and say, you know what, I can work with this? I'd be interested to know.
I'm trying to think.
So you'd only watched Emancipation on television. You never then went after, got the scripts and sat down and watched Ergo, or sat down and watched, you know, A Serpent Song.
No. Well, actually, I think A Serpent Song was one of the scripts.
Oh, so it's late season 2.
Yeah. Okay. So A Serpent Song was one of the scripts. Another one was I loved it because it's like a pure sci-fi story. It was by Heather Yash. What was it? The your fingers flying over the.
I'm finding it, if I can here. Writer. So she did in season 3 Learning Curve, Foothold, and New Ground.
Learning Curve.
I love Learning Curve. That is an adorable story. That's Stargate chicken soup at its purest. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always attracted to those standalone stories with the really purely sci-fi angle. So, you know, whether it's technology based or you're kind of using a trope like AU or which is alternate universes, or time loops, or time travel. You know, of any story, those are always my favorites.
Absolutely. The episode where, you know, the time dilation, and words fail me right now, but the Stargate connects near a black hole, and they're trying to, you know, disconnect from that. I love that episode. It's the only episode that handled relativity, a matter of time. And, you know, it's just cool sci-fi. Absolutely. After years and years, how often would you have a story idea that would just get crushed because either you had done it, or one of the other writers had done it, or another sci-fi franchise had done it? I mean, when you're constructing a show, this had to have happened constantly. Yeah,
there was never a time when we would pitch a show, an episode that had already been done on our show, because we already knew our show.
Oh, okay.
Intimately. But invariably, there would be times when, you know, Brad was always the one to point out, Star Trek already did it. It was the Star Trek episode.
He's a Star Trek fan. So yeah.
Okay.
And so that would happen fairly regularly?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say fairly regularly. I mean, after the 4th season, I remember Paul coming into my office and sitting down, and he had this kind of exhausted look in his eyes, and him telling me, I don't know how we're going to come up with new stories for season 5. You know, after everything we come up with for season 4, I think we're tapped out. But I found that as we went along, it actually became easier to come up with stories, because rather than generating those standalone episodes, and if you look at a lot of the stuff we wrote in season 4, they were very much standalone episodes, like Chain Reaction and Curse and Window of Opportunity. But as time went on, we began to draw on the mythology of the show, and that mythology is what inspired a lot of the later stories. And so it became, I wouldn't say serialized, but there was that kind of arc element to a lot of the stories.
But at that point, I mean, you can't plagiarize yourself. You know, you're building on your own mythology.
Yeah.
You're going to the trouble of creating content for fans, and then you're rewarding those fans by referencing back to that content in intelligent and unexpected ways. So good on you.
Thank you.
You were involved in. I'm going to kind of do some more glossy questions here. We'll get into more of the nitty gritty in future episodes. You were involved in 14, I believe, of the 17 seasons. In your estimation, which episodes, it'll probably be two-parters and, you know, season finales and everything else, which episodes were the most time-intensive, were the most expensive of all of them, you know, perhaps in unexpected ways? You know, I know Martin Garrow always talks about the episode where Carter and Jewel State, Amanda Tapping, Jewel State, and David Hewlett are trapped in the Janai cave, and that was just ballooned. So,
yeah. I mean, as you said, the mid-season two-parters and the finales, simply because of the visual effects, those were always the big splashy episodes, and you know, the visual effects cost you money. And then you know, other times I look at episodes like Heroes 1 and 2. We've got those huge firefights, and those were always time consuming as well.
Wasn't Heroes shot over months? Wasn't Hero like we got a bit here, we got a bit here. Rick's here this week. We're gonna get that here. I was under the impression it took forever to shoot.
There were occasions when I mean we tried to avoid it, but occasionally just because of scheduling, it would happen.
Wow. Was there ever a story that got away? Through years and years, you could never make it really work, or maybe you made it work on Dark Matter.
You know, I always liked time travel stories, and I remember trying to pitch this one time travel story, but you know, as often happens in any show, you'll pitch ideas, and some of them will resonate and some of them won't. And so, I mean, it was very rare that an idea you pitched didn't move forward, because even if the idea that you pitched, for instance, I mean, a Window of Opportunity was a very different pitch than what it turned out to be. It was actually very dark and concerned the team visiting a planet that was facing extinction, this extinction level event, and they were using this device to reloop time, so that it would give them more time to come up with a solution. Very dark.
So in practice, what Daniel was talking about in his speech is what the characters were witnessing in the original draft.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, what are you referring to in the?
So he says the ancients who were using this device never got it to work, and in the end, they just let it come.
Yes. Yeah. So that was the seed of that bit of dialogue.
You know, thinking about season 4 is in many respects my favorite season, and going back, if you now, as the matured writer that you are, had your way with a lot of these episodes, it would turn out to be a very different show. But also, you know, 25 years of time have passed in terms of audience sensibilities and what's expected from television too.
To be honest with you, I mean, we mentioned Scorched Earth, and really, for me, the ending of Scorched Earth is what stands out. But other episodes, I mean, I'm very happy with the way Window of Opportunity turned out, The Curse, Point of No Return, Chain Reaction. I'm trying to remember. Did we do the finale? What was the finale? The season 4 finale? I think we did that.
The season 4 finale was Exodus. Yeah.
Yeah, Exodus. Yeah.
Terrific episode there. Okay, so did you find time travel easier to do on Dark Matter overall?
I did not. I did not.
Okay.
I knew we did an episode, a time loop episode. I always joke that my career starts with a time loop episode, window of opportunity, and potentially ends with a time loop episode all the time in the world. But I knew I wanted to do a time loop episode, and the issue with any episode involving time travel is that it has to make sense within the framework of the story, or theoretically.
The audience has to buy it. Whatever rules you lay down, you have to stick to. It's like Inception.
That's it. And so we were trying to make it work in the room, and we weren't able to make it work, and we just let it go. And I ended up screening, I think, 24 episodes of time loop episodes that other shows had done, and then a half dozen movies. And I did a blog post about it. It was my
Run Lola Run, and
I did my time loop masterclass TED talk on my blog, where essentially I broke down, this is what makes a good time loop episode. And so you synthesize the structure, and then you try to not undermine it, but sort of subvert expectations.
Right.
So audience who come in will be familiar with the formula, but will be surprised about what you do with it, which is pretty much what my general approach to Dark Matter was always, introducing those kind of sci-fi chestnuts and then subverting audience expectations. Whether it be
take a sledgehammer with to them and just yeah. Oh gosh. So Chris mentioned this in Dialing Home, and I'll take his word for it, but I'm curious as to your perspective. There were certain cast members who hated doing time travel stories, and so therefore a lot of them ended up going away. Is there any truth to that?
To the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay.
When we discuss stories, we discuss them in the room, and by the room I mean the writer's room.
Yeah.
And really the only ones who could say no were Brad and Robert.
Okay.
It could have been a situation perhaps where Brad thought, Rick is not going to love this.
Yeah, because Rick was a producer. He got scripts early. So.
Yeah, but there was never a time, for instance, we wrote a script and you threw a script out. Okay. No scripts were ever thrown out.
Okay.
I mean, once you got the go ahead to write a script and you were moving on to outline, then that idea was going to see the light of a TV screen.
I see. Okay. All right. Interesting. I feel like I'm just jumping all over the place with you here, but it's just very general approach. Well, okay then. Was there ever serious consideration given to disclosing the Stargate program to the Earth?
Yes. In fact, that was the idea for Stargate Revolutions, which was the SG-1, the third SG-1 movie that was planned. And a first draft was written, but it went the way of Stargate Extinction, which was the Atlantis movie script as well. We never really got a chance to, we never did get a chance to produce it.
Can you give us any? Because certainly, anything that can come out will not come out of this per se. But can you give us any idea of what that would have looked like?
It's not that I don't want to. It's just that.
Would William Devane have hopefully been involved?
Don't recall.
Okay.
I recall certainly all of SG-1 would have been involved.
That's an SG-1 movie.
Yeah. But in terms of the details, sadly I don't recall.
Okay. I'll give.
I just remember there was a great Sam Jack dinner scene. That's that's one of the few details I remember.
Really? Just like, were they an item at this point?
I believe they might have been, yes.
Okay. Yeah, because she's not under his command anymore.
Right, exactly.
Wow. Throwing that nugget out there for the Sam Jack. Yeah. So Stargate Revolutions, the intent would have been to have them probably an item.
Or heavily hint at the fact that they were an item.
I like that. You don't have to do a wedding scene,
Right.
per se, like you guys did.
Although we did do one.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. The Road Not Taken. I rewatched this episode recently, and it's an alternate reality where the Stargate program was revealed to the world, and it caused chaos and destruction. I mean, people were fighting each other for food, for gasoline. Now, in addition to that, there was the threat of impending alien attack that came with it. But were you telegraphing to us that this is the way that you think it would really happen?
I'm not sure what you mean by telegraphing, but certainly I believe that that's the way it would probably happen.
So it wouldn't be a peaceful kumbaya, oh my gosh, there's alien life. Because it was one of your last episodes concerning that. I was interested to see if this was your way of saying, this is how I would suspect that it would actually go down. And you just said yes.
No, I think if aliens, if the world learned that aliens were on their way, for the most part, people would not be cool. Okay, absolutely. You and I would be cool, of course.
Well, I mean, we would be.
How cool.
Well, we grew up expecting this to happen. I'm still expecting,
it's about time, right?
I have aliens for November this year.
Right.
What do you have for November 2020? But I take out the impending alien attack. Do you think that revealing the Stargate to the world would cause mass chaos? The Stargate itself?
I don't think the general populace would descend into chaos. But I believe world governments angling to get their hands on the gate would potentially create a very bad situation.
So they would start jockeying into position and using their political leverage against other nations and everything else. So hence the moon base.
Right.
So get it out of there. What guest star could you never stop pinching yourself that you were able to get for one of your scripts?
To be honest, I would have to say Bob Picardo.
Yes.
Just because, I love Bob on Voyager.
Yes. Please state the nature of the medical emergency.
Yeah. And, I mentioned him, suggested him a couple of times, and we got him on the show. And he's such a good actor, and he's such a terrific individual, just a real pro, and just a genuinely good guy. That I just loved Woolsey's character arc, and that he was introduced as kind of this pencil pusher, pain in the ass, and he evolved, and he was still kind of the pencil pusher at the end, but you knew kind of what made him tick. You saw kind of the vulnerabilities and the fact that he had a lot of heart, and he was one of my favorite characters, definitely, and one of my favorite guest stars.
I loved Woolsey. Don't get me wrong, but I really would have loved to have seen had he done an alien of some sort.
Had he done what?
An alien.
Oh, yeah.
Because like you said, he has such a range to him.
Yeah.
He could have been anything,
But if he would have been an alien, he wouldn't have been on the show as much as he did.
That's true.
The length of his arc. And just the character he played, I thought he just played him so well. He was so great as Woolsey.
I don't know. You guys were able to do quite a bit with pretty much anything that you had. I really think that if he had hit it out of the park with whatever character he played, you guys would have moved mountains to make it work for the show. I really do think so. I mean, look at how many times we got to see Peter Williams. In the scheme of things, not very much, when you look back on it, but it's just a handful of episodes. But the impact that actor had as Apophis was felt reverberating rippling through the show so much that it felt like he was there more often than he was.
Yeah, Peter was great. Peter is great. I mean, he was great as Apophis. He's great in whatever he does.
Bob said that for Heroes, that one space that he was in, interrogating all the cast and crew, he said that he did that in one day. What a professional, having all of that ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
had to have been intense.
Yeah.
You know, and what was it like doing Heroes? I mean, Terrell had said, you know, Rob had called her. It's the last season. You know, we're not going to do another season. We want to have a death. What was that experience like? We've touched on Heroes once already, but we will again. But I want to. It's so important. It's such a cornerstone to the franchise. I do want to bring it up again.
I think this is really more a question for Rob because
Absolutely.
he wrote and produced the episode. But I mean, it was a tough episode across. You know, just from an emotional level, but just in terms of kind of brass tacks productions, it was tough, and you know, Rob kind of bore the brunt of the challenge, if you will, of producing that particular episode, and then bore the brunt of the fan feedback, if you will. Yeah.
To be diplomatic.
Yes.
Absolutely. Did you think it was bold to knock off Frasier?
I did. I mean, like Rob, I thought season 7 would be its last. I mean, every year from season 5 on, I assumed that, you know, that season would be its last until season 10, when I actually thought, maybe we could come back. And then that's the season that we ended.
Brad said, jump over to Atlantis from, you know what, before I do that, you revealed to us in the Dialing Home discussion a couple years ago that iTunes was interested in picking up SG-1 for an 11th and final season.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that?
Just that they had actually reached out, and you know, at the time, you know, I don't even know what iTunes was doing. They were looking to, I guess, get into television or programming, and this would have been a huge coup for them, essentially saving SG-1, something with a built-in audience.
So you guys had a fan over at Apple.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's something that I don't know if they went really far down the line, but it's something that was discussed, and then ultimately we were unable to pursue because of the contracts that were in place. Legally, we were not permitted to pursue an 11th season.
That's something about a clause in the agreement with Sci-Fi Channel. And Arc of Truth was the condensed version of what season 11 would have become, I'm guessing?
I don't think so.
No.
Unless Rob has said that.
No, he hasn't.
We hadn't spun any stories for season 11.
Okay.
So I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, the way it usually works is once we finish shooting one season, then we gather the writer's room and spin for a couple of months, come up with story ideas, and then go off and write. So we found out about the SG-1 cancellation well before we finished spinning for season 10, which is why SG-1, out of the 3 Stargate shows, SG-1 is the only one with a series finale. It was actually written as a series finale, even though I keep saying that Atlantis and SGU, Stargate Universe, work as season finales. For SG-1 was the only one
that was intended to be
written. Yes.
Isn't that interesting? Okay, and the only one that was guaranteed for pretty much guaranteed for movies at that point, right? As well.
I guess so. Yeah.
Because the cast, I mean, Christopher talked about, when they were filming Unending, they knew that the chances were pretty darn good that they were coming back.
Yeah.
So interesting. Man, what a show. What a run, 10 years. And I know when Showtime launched it, they had 2 years out of the gate. Then I think even before Children of the Gods aired, then they had 4, and then it was extended to 5. That had to have been, I mean, just for those 2 years that you were a part of that had to have been A, wonderful that you're getting, you're getting a paycheck, but B, you have time to delve into the characters a little bit more specifically than you would under perhaps other circumstances, where I know that there's a lot of network shows that, okay, we've been given 4 more. Oh, we've been given 3 more,
Yeah.
Brad said he had mentioned to me in an interview a couple of years ago that the Wraith were not going to be defeated in Stargate Extinction, but rather that there was going to be an evolution of them. He said it would have evolved the Wraith. Can you tease a little bit about what he meant by that?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. It certainly
You're
would have
toying
evolved.
with me.
No, it certainly would have evolved the relationship between Shepard and Todd.
Shepard and Todd.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Like a baby?
No.
Okay.
Who knows though?
Come on, you got to give me a little nugget more. Just a little one beyond that. Come on, Joe.
Honestly, I'm not trying to be evasive. I just
Okay.
maybe I got to go back and reread the script.
I have it somewhere.
But
I
mean, you reread it and get back to me.
I've never actually read it.
Ultimately, what the story sees Atlantis returning to Pegasus in a nutshell. That's
yeah. It starts off. I remember reading the first scene, and it's Lorne and someone. I think it's Zelenka on the moon, and they're staring at Atlantis.
And we do the reveal of Atlantis.
Right. That's like, man, please, that would have been so cool.
Yeah.
I still have hope, especially if we are going to be moving forward with a fourth series, that there is going to be some kind of resolution there. There has to be, even if it
positive,
is.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's just, I mean, I would appreciate a little bit more than passing dialogue, but we're going to get what we can, and so it's like with SGU. We saw Picardo and we saw Hewlett. Those characters persist. They weren't wiped out by the Scourge. And
right. The scourge of a reboot.
Right. Well, that too. I was meaning the Wraith, but yes, very true. I loved what was done with SGU, particularly, and I was one of its staunchest critics in the beginning. The sex in the closet scene and everything else. I was like, oh, man, really? We're going there? And it grew to be my favorite of the three, and I make no bones about that. Especially the last 10 were extraordinary hours of television. Episodes like Time, the Epilogue with Carl Binder. I mean, there were some extraordinary beats in there. One of the things that I loved about that show was the route that you guys took with time travel, where you allowed a copy of the characters to exist 2,000 years in the past and then deal with their descendants. Tell us about, I mean, I know, you were in the rooms when you guys were spinning that stuff. Tell us about that.
It's funny because in retrospect, you look back and you think, Epilogue would have really been the perfect episode to end the series on. But at the time, I mean, we really thought we were coming back for a third and final season. So
third and final, not 5.
Yes. No, I think late in the going, we were told that the show was not going to come back, but there were discussions about coming back for a third and final season. Okay. So we're like, okay, fine, we'll take it, and then that went away.
Yeah.
So
Boy, did
like I said, the finale was already not intended to be a finale, but we were in the editing room, and Paul had the idea of book ending with the same montage that we started in air with the ship opening up and going through the levels and everything.
Instead, her going to sleep.
Yeah, basically, essentially, we just roll it backwards and then just that final shot of Destiny jumping into FCL and leaving us behind. I find so powerful.
I do. But, I'm getting chills just thinking about it, man.
Yeah. In terms of Epilogue, it was just a perfect Carl Binder script.
Oh, yeah.
Carl is one of my favorite writers, and he was always great at really the character-driven stories. And I think, and even, how he can convey emotion, like such powerful emotions without any dialogue. With that scene where TJ's getting sicker and sicker, and she's at the table, and she's eating with the family,
Yeah,
and
she
then
has-
she's getting sicker,
Yeah,
and
Lou
sicker,
Gehrig's
and then
disease.
basically she's gone. She's no longer there, and it's
Pulls your heart out.
I think it's one of the best episodes I think the franchise produced.
The cinematography of that episode is absolutely extraordinary. The shot of Elena on the shore washing clothes, and you can see her she's having trouble with grasping, and it pulls back, and you've got that master of the fog. I was like, oh, man, how extraordinary you guys, and the Destiny set. It was like being on the Nautilus. It was Jules Verne. It was just beautiful. Absolutely. Yeah. I wanted to ask you one last thing. I before I start talking about the fans and getting them involved. You pulled our hearts out by nuking the Asgard at the end of season 10.
Right.
And it really solidified the fact that the loss of SG-1 was definitely a death of the series. Then we introduced them because you had the puppet in Atlantis. And they were called the Evil Asgard. They didn't really get a name. I was one of the earliest people who had mentioned that we'll call them the Vanir if we're looking at that mythology. Was there ever a thought, a consideration further down that you could address further down the road in a show of resurrecting the Asgard race through the Vanir, through the evil Asgard?
Yes, in fact, that was a very strong possibility. I mean, as I used to say whenever we used to kill off characters on Stargate, no one ever really dies in sci-fi.
No, and their consciousnesses are inside the computer on the Odyssey.
Exactly.
Okay.
So there always was that possibility.
Wow. So potentially could be one day again. So that was that. I was watching that episode and I was like, well, if we could somehow copy them, if we could deal with them as a species and everything that they're doing that's evil, and somehow use them as and their current physical forms as a template, and hopefully reverse their flaw. Thor and Heimdall and Freyr would have a physical place to go.
So many great opportunities that sadly we didn't get to follow through on because we didn't get that 6th season.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the reasons that you were my first of the production side of things in terms of guests for this show is your heavy involvement with fandom to this day. You are one of the ones that, not to say that the others don't, but you're more active. You really appreciate and value the fan base, and its continued importance to the growth of the franchise. Are there any particular interactions with fans that stand out over the years?
I mean, just in general, meeting the fans and I always used to, I was always very touched by the number of letters and postcards we would receive from the troops serving overseas, who were all big fans of the shows, particularly SG-1, because we had that Air Force connection.
Absolutely.
So, that really stands out, but just in general, meeting the fans. And I remember joining Gate World before I even landed on the show, because I was looking to research the show, and that's how I ended up, kind of doing the deep dive. Obviously watching the episodes, but interacting with the fans and finding out basically what really drew them to the show.
I guess it makes sense that would be your research, just like anything else. So I'm glad we didn't scare you off. All right, that's my line of questioning for this particular initial episode, and we do have fan questions here. All right, fantastic. So let's see what we've got. I really want to extend my thanks to my moderating team: Summer, Keith, Tracy, Ian. You guys are rock stars, and it's so good to have you out there. We did our first show last Saturday, and there were like 50 people live. I would have been happy with 5, and 3 of those would have been my parents' computers. And these people came to me and they said, "How can I help out?" So, Summer
Amazing.
Roy,
Thank you guys.
Yes, absolutely. Keith, Tracy, Ian, I appreciate you very much. I also have Linda. She's helping me on the side with trivia questions, organizing trivia, and Jen as well. You know what? Before we get to that, I want to do a quick round of trivia with you. So before we get to the fan questions, so do you have your trivia questions pulled up?
I do not.
Okay. Can you grab them?
I will grab them.
Okay.
Hang on.
All right. While you do that, I will go ahead and do a quick call to action here. So if you like what you've seen on this episode, I would appreciate it if you'd click that like button. It really makes a difference with YouTube's algorithm and would definitely help the show grow its audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. If you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. And if you plan to watch live, I recommend giving the bell icon a click so that you'll be the first to know of any schedule changes, which, as we've seen, have already happened. So bear in mind, clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next several days on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. And the clips are designed for people who don't have a chance to sit through the full live show or want to remember the sweet moments of the episodes. So, all right, I've got mine for you. Did you manage to find them?
I did.
All right. Do you want to ask me first, or do you want me to ask you? Or you want to go back and forth?
Wait. Are these questions for me, or do I have to ask you questions?
Those 3 questions are for me. I have not seen them.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right.
I have questions for you.
Okay, we'll start with the easy then.
Okay. What species attempted to wipe out the Incaran encampment in Scorched Earth?
Oh, that was the Gadmir.
Yes.
And I remember because Rob called me into his office and was like, I need to come up with, we didn't name the race in the script. He was, I need to come up with an alien race, and they won't let me name anything anymore, I think, after the Furling debacle. So I think I came up with a bunch of names, Genai, Gadmir, and a bunch of other ones. He chose Gadmir, and then I ended up using the Genai, or we ended up using the Genai.
Genai was that early on. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. And that was also a TNG species.
Oh, I did not know.
Yeah, that was the. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, that was the species that were all the same sex.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But you know what? I mean, there are only so many sounds in language. At a certain point, just what can you do? Very good. Do you have an easy one for me?
I do.
1 point to you.
Who was the first character to sit in the ancient control chair on both SG-1 and Atlantis? Actually, there are 2 characters, but.
Okay, so the ancient control chair in Lost City, that would have been O'Neill.
Correct.
And the first one seen on screen in Atlantis?
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it's Beckett.
According to this, the answer is John Shepard.
Really?
But I think you're correct. I think
Beckett's already sitting in it. It has to be Beckett because Shepard's still in the helicopter.
See, you know better than the experts, I would say.
I'm going to have to get new experts.
I'm going to give you the point. I'm going to give you full points for that.
All right. Yeah, I think that's the case.
Yeah, because it activates. Well,
right. He has to trigger the drone. So.
Wait a minute. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like the scene with Ayana millions of years ago. Yeah, absolutely. So
I'm trying to think back. When does?
Yeah, because Shepard's not on. Shepard's still in the helicopter. He's still flying Jack there. So right. I'm gonna have to check my folks with the trivia questions.
Yeah. Someone's getting fired.
No, someone's not getting fired. No. Yeah. So it is Beckett. Okay. Back to that. That for getting Anna Grauer to come back in for that one scene, and her husband actually to play opposite of her. How wonderful was that to have that little tie, even no dialogue, nothing, to that episode Frozen from season 6.
Yeah.
Maybe you can answer this for me, because every time I watch the episode, he looks like he's scouring at her before he walks away. Is he pissed at her about something? Was she a bad girl Is that the intent there before he leaves her alone on Atlantis, or is he just walking away from her? What was your guys' intent?
To be honest with you, I don't recall.
I'm pulling weight.
Yeah.
Because it looks like something has gone terribly wrong.
But yes, definitely there's a suggestion that there's been a falling out.
Okay. There we go. Absolutely. A medium question for you, Sergio. What production issue with Jason Momoa over season break had to be dressed in Reunion? What had to be done on screen?
Oh, well, there's a reference to his tattoo that he got.
That's right.
In the off season. But where I thought you were going was the dreads, where he ended up losing the dreads.
I think a later season.
But yeah, in between season 4 and season 5. And he basically, he said, I want to cut my dreads.
He said it was hurting his head.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, well, that's fine. And I checked with the network and they were like, oh no, we can't lose his dreads. And I was really annoyed because because Broken Ties would be it was being Broken Ties.
Yeah, that was season
opportunities.
5.
I wanted to write a scene where he goes dark side and shaves his head, loses, cuts his dreads, and we could have done it all on screen. But they're like, no, the character's known for his dreads, so we ended up having to wig him.
Isn't it? So Jason reached out to you guys and said, "Is it okay for me to do it?" He didn't just do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
cool.
no. In that case, he basically said, he basically said, they're kind of making my life miserable, and we're not going to tell him, no, you have to live a miserable
in pain.
life.
Well, I mean, medical complications could eventually arise, so that's a big deal. What's your second question for me?
I got okay. Who was the last captain of the Prometheus?
I think it's Everett. Is it Everett?
Is that your final answer?
No. It's not Ronson. Ronson was the first. Pendergast. Pendergast went down with the ship.
Do you remember his rank?
I think he's a colonel.
Correct. Colonel Lionel Pendergast. See, that one I knew. Yeah. Very good.
That's a great shot of him just closing his eyes. You see him swallow hard, and then he blows up. You know, what a sequence. Holy cow. And then Mitchell and Teal'c's reaction after, oh, hell. I mean, that season, you guys blew up 2 ships. You blew up Prometheus and you blew up the hell.
The Russian?
Yeah, the Russian ship. What was that? What was that called? The Korolev. The Korolev. Yeah. And we lost Colonel Chekhov in that too, for all intents and purposes. Yeah. So he went out with a bang. Yeah. All right. Hard question. SGU.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
How long was Colonel Telford with the Ursini?
This is pretty embarrassing because let's see.
You wrote it.
In terms of episodes or in terms of time?
He mentions how long he's been with them.
I'm going to say, and this is the total guess, because even though it was my episode, I don't recall. I'm going to say 3 months.
1 month.
1 month.
Yep.
It felt like 3 months for him, though.
It was a way. I wonder what he ate, I know. He's over there.
That's why I'm saying, basically, the food was not good.
Yeah, I know.
Cramped.
That's a species I would have loved to have seen again. Yeah. And they sacrifice themselves and just drive the seed ship right into the berserker drones. So what a cool, the species that you guys were species plural that you guys were developing for SGU were so cool. I loved who would have eventually been named the Nakai, the fish people who were following. Just yes or no, do you know what their ultimate goal was in Destiny, or was that not determined yet?
Oh no, they basically wanted the ship.
Okay, so there was no connection with they were former ancients or something like that. It was just straight up they wanted the.
No.
Okay, interesting. And then I think the all-time coolest one would have been the Star System builders, the most advanced, whatever they were in all of Stargate lore. What was your intent? Was your guys' intent to create something to outdo the ancients?
There, people ask me what was the end game for for Stargate Universe, and Brad told me the end game back in season 2. But he's like, don't tell anybody because I want the opportunity to tell that story.
So that may have been a part of that.
It may have been a part of it.
It may have been. I know that you know it. I know that David Blue knows it, and he's not telling even his castmates. So that guy's a lead
in the vault.
Absolutely, it is. And I'm hoping one day, if God forbid that this doesn't come to pass with the next series, I'm hoping that Brad will take me into his confidence and tell me one day. But it's
think positive.
Think positive.
That 4th season is coming.
Absolutely.
4th series. Okay, I've got some. Okay, your hard question.
Okay.
How many SG-1 episodes were written by Christopher Judge, and can you name them?
The Changeling.
Correct.
He had story by credit on The Warrior.
Correct. That was actually when I got the answers here. I was like, well, that's not right. He didn't write that episode. Correct.
Okay, we're gonna sort these out together.
Yeah.
So he had story by credit on The Warrior. Yeah. He wrote The Changeling.
Yeah.
He wrote the Amazonian Jaffa episode, which was both of them. I can't think of the first one's name, but Sacrifices. I remember that
Correct.
one. He wrote that. But the season 7 episode, I don't know. I can't remember its name off the top. All the episodes for years were in my head, and now they are gone.
Because you're getting up there.
Exactly.
The answer is Birthright.
Birthright.
Right. And I remember, I think this was the episode with the horses in the gate room.
Sacrifices, because they're there for the marriage.
Sacrifices. Okay, yes. Okay, so Sacrifices was the one with the horses in the gate room. I remember it because I remember the day we were like, we're never having horses in the gate room.
Really?
This is a disaster.
The horse flatulence and, all kinds of...
Yeah, and everything that comes with it,
Oh, man. That's funny. Oh, my gosh. Well, very good. So, yeah, I think we're
win that one.
We're 2-2.
No, I think you
did. I win it.
You missed.
I kind of won it. Okay,
but I mean, I got,
cool.
I said 3 months, and
well, I appreciate you playing. All right, let's look here to the viewer Q&A, and thank everyone for submitting. Summer, Keith, Tracy, Ian, I love you guys. Summer would like to know: will you reveal the Furlings in a new SGU show, and will they be the new main bad guy? Yes or no? And that even rhymes.
That is a question for Brad.
Okay.
I think personally for the Furlings, the less you know about them, the better. I kind of like the fact that they're kind of mysterious, and you imagine them as I used to say, as the Care Bears of outer space.
Right.
Adorable little
giant koalas.
Ragamuffins, yeah.
I think that if we were actually to see the Furlings, I don't think that they would have a single hair on their bodies.
Yeah, well, I always pictured that they would be these gaunt, kind of scaly features.
I wrote a story a long time ago, but I'm not going to bore you with it. Or an outline. Ian, had the Emmy for Best Production Design existed when SGU was on, do you think it would have been nominated or potentially won? That's a good question.
Well, I think it certainly would or should have been nominated and possibly won. The fact is, sci-fi really receives little respect.
Don't get me started.
When it comes to sort of those awards and kind of the more mainstream awards.
Yeah, it's nice to think about though. I mean, TNG, its last season, it won, or it was nominated for Best Dramatic Series for season 7. So, these things do happen every now and then. Scotty0709, I know that the primary focus will obviously be Stargate, but I'd love to know if there's any hope for a continuation of Dark Matter at some point in the future. I think asked and answered a little bit, but Joe, you can come back around.
Yeah,
to
no,
that.
I mean, I haven't given up hope. I mean, right now I'm actually working on other stuff. We tried very hard. There was a point I think I mentioned where MGM actually offered to step in and potentially help save Dark Matter, which would have opened up to, a whole host
Who knows,
of
crossover
possibilities. But I mean, we just kind of the clock ran out on us. So I'm not actively pursuing anything now, and yet in a way I kind of am by working on these other projects that hopefully get off the ground. Hopefully they will create, a little more movement in terms of my career, especially, that will give me the opportunity to sort of reach out to people and try to get me a mini series is what I would ideally love to do, and just kind of finish the story that I'd set out.
Absolutely. That's the only way to go as far as I'm concerned. What I'm sure it wasn't your intent going. You were wanting to create something different. But at what point did it come across your mind that, Dark Matter was enough out of the way of the type of content that it was compared to Stargate that a crossover could be still viable?
I think, when MGM presented the possibility, I automatically thought this we could do a crossover simply because more SG-1 and Atlantis, because tonally, I think Dark Matter really, in terms of humor, in terms of kind of the color of the character, in terms of kind of the action adventure, kind of propulsion of the narrative, they're very much alike.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. Let's see here. Raj Luthra, will we see any of the main cast from Dark Matter in a Stargate series? Boy, that was the case with Jodelle Furland.
Yeah, yeah.
She started off as Adria.
The other way.
Yeah, the other way.
Yeah, like I said, I remember working with Jodelle when she was 13 as Princess Harmony, and thinking she is fantastic.
Episode.
And actually, when I wrote the character of 5 in Dark Matter,
yes,
she was originally intended to be around 13 or 14. And I did think of Jodelle, but of course Jodelle had grown up a bit since then.
Right.
But she was fantastic in the role. And then we had obviously David Hewlett on the show and Tori. In fact, I wrote the role for Tori because I thought she would be great, and she was fantastic.
It was so fantastic to have her back involved.
Yeah.
Raj Luthra, will SG-1, SGA, and SGU return? I mean, I think at this point, it's safe to say, you would probably agree with me, Joe, the fourth series is the most ideal path forward at this point.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, a fourth series, as I keep saying, it would be an all-new team, something, a show that would be a great jumping on point or an easy jumping on point for new viewers. But it would certainly allow, Brad to wrap up all those other storylines, be it Universe, SG-1, or Atlantis.
Absolutely. And were a fourth series successful, it doesn't change the fact that these sets are gone. CG animation has come a considerable distance since these shows closed. And, you've got the actors. They're still thankfully all with us. Anything's a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Scotty0709, Joe, this is a yes or a no. Okay. Does Joe know what caused the pattern in the cosmic microwave background radiation in SGU?
Yes.
Is it cool?
It's pretty cool, yeah.
Okay. Claire Cowan, what's the weirdest thing you have ever eaten? Now, Joe's eaten some pretty weird things because he's a foodie.
Yeah, I remember being in Japan, of course, and I didn't even set out to eat anything weird. I just ordered a soup at the hotel, and it was, it came with with the seafood, and there were these little dumplings. I thought they were dumplings, but they were, I didn't know if they were filled with whipped ricotta cheese or something. It was basically but very mild, and I was like, what is this? And
so you'd already started eating it.
Yeah, I'd eaten it already. It was actually good.
Okay.
And I was like, what is this? And the waitress was like, milt. And I was like, what is that in English? She's like, milt. I had to actually go to Wikipedia to look it up. It's cod sperm. So
wow.
That is probably the weirdest thing.
Okay, then. Fish sperm.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever, man. Whatever floats your boat. But it was good, right?
You would never know it. You'd never think, why don't they ever serve that?
Yeah, what can we serve, to a foreigner in a hotel or whatever? Jeez,
man. The chefs are all looking out the window. He's eating it. Oh my God, he's eating it.
He likes it. Scotty0709, if you could put the main cast of Dark Matter into a Stargate series, what sort of roles would be perfect for them? 5 would be a tech head.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the roles they play in Dark Matter would actually be pretty close. I mean, obviously Anthony Lemke would be a merc, or maybe kind of a loose cannon soldier. Melissa would definitely. I mean, she would be another Sam Carter. with a lot more swagger.
Got to change it up a little.
Jr. would be like a by the book. I mean, they would all be great. I think, frankly, soldiers. Yeah.
Let's see here. DNO space IT. Deno it. Sorry, I'm probably butchering that one. The most fun episode that you created. What turned out to be, you look back and like, that was a good time.
I think back to my experience on set. I had a great time on Harmony. It wasn't my episode, but we were in the woods. I was in the woods with director Will Waring, who's always a blast to work with. Cool. And I had a really good time on that episode. In terms of my episode, I'm very fond of Ripple Effect. That remains actually one of my favorites. Just with the the various versions of SG-1, and I look back and I think I put them up on the blog, but there were so many. The script went long, so there were so many scenes I had to excise, and a lot of those scenes there were so many in jokes and references to past episodes, and I'm kind of sorry that they never
saw the light of day.
Yeah.
I mean, you had Terrell back, you had JR back.
Yeah.
Those are big pieces of Stargate canon. You handed us a silver platter of wonderful content in that show for sure. Claire Cowan, Amanda kept all her scripts. What'd you do with yours?
I think I might still have a couple of scripts, but sadly I don't. I have the digital versions. Most of the scripts. But
because you started there. The actors got them later and would probably put in notes.
Yeah.
Heather Kowilich, a question for Joe. Tell us about the project you were working on that is now a no-go. I want to know what was on your mind. Do you know what she's talking about here?
I will say this. Basically, I've been working on an adaptation of a comic book, and it's been temporarily shelved, but I have hopes that it will continue soon. But I mean, to be honest with you, in this industry, there are so many. I mean, you're juggling so many projects that more often than not, they end up in your project graveyard, which is kind of sad. But what I will do is I will tell you if a project is dead, then I will definitely tell you. Like, basically, I mean, there's just so many that come to mind. I mean, there was I pitched a StarCraft television series, and cool. I remember basically I sat down and I watched. I don't know how many, like 16 hours of gameplay.
Yeah.
And basically got the story down and made the pitch, and it didn't go anywhere. And I was incredibly bummed.
Absolutely. That would have been awesome.
Yeah. And then there was another show. It was like a horror series that in the industry, they do something. It's almost like a bake sale. Like they have different writers pitch their take, and then essentially they pick the one they like. And I pitched a take that I thought was great, but the buyer did not think so, and they went with someone else. And then it crashed and burned. It was canceled after one season. And it kind of breaks my heart because I thought I would have, done something really great with it. So, I mean, it's all part of the business, sadly. For every Stargate SG-1, I'm sure there are dozens and dozens of missed opportunities.
Yeah, you do the best you can with what you got. Some days you win, some days you lose. It's a competitive industry. So
it is.
Free Spirit 999. What advice would you give to people who are wanting to get in on helping to make a new show who don't live in Vancouver?
Very tough. I mean, it depends on what, basically what you do. I mean, if you're an actor, you get yourself in front of a casting director so that when the time comes and they're looking for certain roles, they'll think of you. If you're, it's kind of tough if you're, graphic designer, or if you work in visual effects. I mean, there's more of a possibility, but usually, I mean, it really depends. I mean, for instance, on Dark Matter, we used one visual effects house, and then for the first season and the subsequent 2 seasons, we ended up using a bunch of different visual effects houses.
Oh, okay, you farmed it out.
Whereas on Stargate, we ended up creating our own in-house
Yes.
department. So it's kind of tough. I think just again, depending on what it is you do, just keep your eye out. Find out if and when the show gets a green light. Find out the production address and send in your resume.
Absolutely. Another one from Free Spirit. How would you like to see the 4th Stargate show progress story-wise? Kind of like flow like Game of Thrones, be more episodic, be a mix?
I think the best of both worlds would be great. I mean, I always love the fact that on Stargate Universe, and kind of the same thing as Dark Matter, even though it was more serialized, each episode pretty much had a beginning, middle, and an end. So there was kind of that satisfactory standalone quality about the episodes as well. So yeah, I'd say more like Universe.
Scotty 0709, looking back on Universe, would you change anything about that first season? Hindsight 2020, Monday morning quarterbacking, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's
the further we move into the future, the velocity of the movement of SGU season 1 is far more palatable because of the programming that we're watching now. It unpacks slowly, like almost any kind of programming does now that's long form.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were able to tell those later stories like Incursion because you laid the groundwork in those early episodes like Earth and Water. So I don't know what I would have necessarily done differently.
There's a lot of talk in the chat here about prequels, like how the Stargate was created, the 4 great races, and you've already established that you're not a big fan of prequels. So
I'm not a fan of
largely
prequels. I don't. And I mean, like I said, who knows what the 4th series Brad will come up with, but I'm pretty sure it won't be a prequel.
Yeah, well, that's good.
I mean, the prequels essentially you already know the end of the story,
and the most arguably important part of the story.
Yeah,
because that story was told first.
Wow.
So. Free Spirit 999. Would you like to keep the story in production to stay family friendly like SG-1 and SGA rather than like SGU, or other modern TV shows that are showing more mature content? So the audience level of the 4th show.
I kind of prefer tonally and thematically a show like SG-1 and Atlantis, which is very much what Dark Matter was, which, I mean, not only family friendly, but really there was a sense of family at its core through SG-1, and even so, in Universe as well. I mean, if you take away maybe a few scenes in Air Part 1, it
works fine.
It was pretty much that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is some intense stuff. I mean, when Telford is having the air sucked out of him, that's hard to watch, and not only, speaking of that, air sucked out of him, you look at Riley, in season 2. That's a hard scene to watch,
Yes.
But what television?
I mean, but we went, there were instances where we were pretty dark in
Dark Matter?
Atlantis as well.
Oh, Atlantis, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
burying people alive and
Beckett's death and was it Shepard feeding a guy to the Wraith? Was that episode?
Miller's Crossing.
Yeah, Miller's Crossing.
That's pretty intense. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's see. Ian says, were there any storylines that you wanted to write more episodes about, or that you thought could have been expanded on? And where to begin on that one, probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we had done a 6th season, I remember having an idea for a time travel episode that would involve the hybrid, Michael's
Michael's men.
Wraith hybrids. Yeah. So that's a missed opportunity.
That dude right there on the 304s, there were mysterious labels on the badges: Second Tactical Wing, Fast Attack Wing, Deep Space Defense, Deep Space Carrier. Was there a structure behind that? I imagine that was like the design people probably just, I mean, they would create something and have approval for that. Weren't you like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's it. I mean, everything, I mean, really more on SG-1, the Air Force vetted everything, less so on Atlantis and Universe. But I think the production team took their cue from what we had done in SG-1. And I know Brad was kind of a stickler for, trying to remain as true or grounded as possible.
I think the cool thing about that is you're suggesting, through these different patches and different styles, that there's a larger universe at play here, that there's a lot more going on than we're watching on screen. So there's a bigger group of people involved.
Yeah.
Nathaniel, how would you deal with the power creep that has slowly increased during the lifetime of the 3 shows, i.e. the Tauri now has ancient Asgard capability and defeated the Ori? That's a good question.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
How would you deal with the power creep that has slowly increased during the lifetime of the 3 shows? Like Daedalus and Odyssey had Asgard beam weapons. Right. Eventually we become pretty darn powerful near the end of it.
Yes, yeah. I remember actually Ben Browder would be like, let's find a way to get rid of that Asgard beaming technology. Like maybe there's like a horrible accident that
they ban
forces us to pack it away. Yeah. I mean, it was an issue. I mean, especially in season 10, where you essentially have leapfrogged modern technology by such an enormous bound that it becomes less of the show it was when it originally premiered. But I mean, creatively, there were always way around that. There's always issues with new technology. There's always, those sarcophaguses sure would have come in handy on many occasions.
Jeez, that's the truth. Absolutely. How exciting, Jonah says, how exciting about the news that microbial life may exist on Venus.
That is very exciting.
Well, isn't that cool?
Yes, yeah.
Ugly Pig, were you ever into Euro comics, or were you all about the superhero genre?
I'm trying to think. I'm a big fan of Black Sad. And I'm not sure if they are French comics.
Like Valerian?
No, actually, it was. They're actually noir.
Okay.
It was like, I think 1940s, 1950s era books with. I mean, the characters are cats and dogs, and I mean,
Wow.
But it's an excellent series.
Cats and
that's actually one of my favorites.
Like anthropomorphic cats and dogs?
Yes.
They wear trench coats and hats. And...
Yes. Okay. But they're really smart book series. I would highly recommend.
Okay. What's it called again?
Black Sad. Black and Sad. SAD.
Black Sad.
Yeah.
Got it. Scotty
0709.
Were there any more plans for the Reetou?
No, people always ask about the Reetou and what was a race with the birds' nests in their hair?
The Nox.
Yeah. People always ask about the Nox and the Reetou. No,
well, the Nox are important because the Nox are one of the great races.
Yes.
So
yes.
Cool. That's interesting. I thought the Reetou, because the Reetou did get mentioned in season 3. I thought that there was like a hope to bring them back, just never could make it work.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, they never came up in the room in season 4 because they were before my time.
Yeah.
They were not a race that I necessarily would
got it. Have considered, and they're effects heavy. Yeah. So, Denoit, have you read any of the Fandemonium Stargate books?
I have not.
Okay.
I'm sure they're fine products.
Oh yeah.
But I don't. Given the fact that I wrote for the show, it's very unlikely that I would read a book.
Got it. That makes sense. That dude right there, you shared a lot about Extinction. Any plans for more reveals in the future, like the story behind future Todd? I.e., there's a Todd that comes from the future into the past. Or what happened to Keller? Anything with John and Taylor?
I think I revealed quite a bit, and I think I posted a bunch of scenes. Okay. We did like a big script read through, or
at Comic-Con.
Read through several scenes at SDCC.
And you revealed that Elizabeth, in her physical form, survived.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind.
Yeah, well, in my mind, where else do these things come from but your minds?
Yeah, I mean, in the series, they assume she's dead because Oberoth says, we killed her. But he said,
Oberoth's a jerk.
He's a human form replicator. You're going to take him for his word? So in my mind, she was always somewhere off-site. And to be honest with you, I think after season 4, there was an intention to potentially bring her back.
Right.
But, it just
Ghost in the Machine. So Tori had, I think, just moved on mentally. I think she brought that up. Yeah. And we were lucky enough to have her involved in Dark Matter. So, I can't blame her for it. Free Spirit 999. Were you team John Elizabeth or team John Taylor? I'm a Weir and Shepherd fan myself.
I was team John neither. John Solo. John
Rodney. Absolutely. Yeah. Scotty0709, according to a Gateworld poll, fans want a new Stargate series to be serialized rather than episodic. Does that fact surprise you?
No. I mean, I think you can still have the best of both worlds.
And television audiences have moved on in terms of what they expect now. We binge.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Akos Tamas Novaki. Do you look back to Stargate rather as a job or as a fan? And can you separate the two from each other in your mind when you think back on it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course it was a job, but really I look back fondly on the time I had, really more the experience with the people. And very much as a fan. I mean, in terms of what we accomplished, so, we're 350 hours of sci-fi television. It's pretty damn impressive. And I look back on a few of those years where we were producing 40 episodes of television a year, which is insane.
Insane.
I mean, you look today and
10, 8.
Yeah, they're doing
every
10,
2 years.
13. Yeah.
Jeez, man. Mythology question. And this is actually one that I considered as well. I just assumed that this was the case when this aired. Yeah. And then after SG-1 ended, I was like, oh, that wasn't revealed. Did you intend for the Ori to be behind the plague that wiped out the Ancients?
That is a question for Robert Cooper.
Rob Cooper is the Ori guy.
He was the architect of the Ori and the Ancients.
Got it. Sarah Langlois, how many writers were there for any one given episode?
There was only one writer per episode.
Right.
However, we would get together in the room, as I said, between seasons, and we would spin ideas, and someone would throw out an idea like, hey, how about an episode where, Shepard retires and opens a hot dog stand, and be like, what a great idea! And then we'd all throw out our ideas.
Supported each other,
and you would, we would all generate ideas. We would break the story, as it were, on the whiteboard, 5 acts, and then usually the writer who came up with the idea would go off and write the script.
That makes, it's you guys aren't an island unto yourselves, and I know in certain circumstances, like Martin Garrow commented on the fact that he had created, I forget the episode title for season 9, but it's the episode where Daniel has the confrontation with the prior, and Vala's imprisoned on the alien. Is it the powers that be? Martin had written that episode, but there was like a scheduling thing, and Rob had to finish it. And Rob basically ghost wrote a lot of it. So those kinds of things had to happen every now and then.
That happens a lot. And, it happens on any show where the writer's name on the script may not necessarily be the one who, they may have written part of it, but maybe they wrote, they wrote all of it, if they've been with the show for a while, but sometimes that really wasn't the case. So
yeah.
It's always interesting to see sort of fan reactions to certain episodes. It's like, why don't you bring this writer back? It's like, well, you can't really say anything, but actually Brad wrote that episode.
Right, exactly. No, in many cases that, and you would have to have like a pretty thick skin, you'd have to survive a business like that. I presented a product, Roddenberry was notorious for rewriting. Just ripping stuff out of the Star Trek scripts that he was given. And a lot of people the writers were complaining that he was doing it just to make it his own. And it's hard to say, over decades of time, what that was. But the end result is the content that was put out. Stargate Props and Memorabilia Museum. Do you believe in extraterrestrial life?
I believe it's very possible. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope that life exists. I'm not sure, but can't be sure. Eagle, how did it happen that General Orion had an appearance? And I guess General Jumper, too, in season 7. Did the Air Force reach out, or did you?
No, I think, there were high-level discussions, and I think they may have asked. And so I think it was General Orion was first. I'm always fun telling this story, but General Jumper, was in what was it, season?
He was in Lost City.
9?
Yeah, he was on set. He couldn't do the ADR, so the audio that you have of him on set is the only thing that you could use.
Yeah. So he's a very busy guy, and he came on, and I remember seeing him in the hallway, and I was like, so is this your first show? Or are you going to be doing any more guest appearances on anything else? And he's like, no, he was like, this it's a rare exception. I'm only doing SG-1. And I'm like, okay, but if I turn on my TV next week and I see you on Moesha, and he's like, no. So I think I didn't watch Moesha, but I'm pretty sure he did not put in a guest appearance. But if Moesha fans, let me know.
Corinne Cook, the more you wrote SG-1, did you find the characters easier to write for? Or did the new so the new situations didn't complicate things in that direction?
No, not at all. The characters definitely got a lot easier to write as time went on.
Also their voices, I would think. I mean, once you internalize their voices.
Switch, yes. And you know exactly what Teal'c would say, how he'd say it, and the same for any other character.
Who was the toughest of the original 4 for you to write for?
To be honest, I think it was Teal'c.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was fun to write for him because he had that stoicism.
He's the alien.
Him. Yeah. But I don't think that any of the 4 of them were really hard to write for. But if I had to choose one of the 4, O'Neill was always a lot of fun. Because he would, crack wise, and Carter, had that sci-fi techie grounding, which is always fun, and Daniel had that humanity. Then again, Teal'c, I love being able to write Teal'c as a fish out of water. There was Murray and Point of No Return,
funny.
and those instances.
Yeah, his episodes, moving out on his own.
Affinity.
Just a pleasure. Absolutely. Yeah. Derived Class 1, I'd love to hear Joe discuss the show's relationship with and portrayal of the U.S. military. Were you ever accused of making propaganda?
I
guess I read that wrong.
Never personally accused. I know I've seen criticisms of both shows.
Yeah.
But especially SG-1, the fact their connection to the Air Force and the fact that we're glorifying the military.
I initially read the question wrong. I shouldn't have chuckled so hard because I was thinking more along the lines of, were a Stargate program to exist, was this like a cover-up? That's how but in making propaganda, like in support of the military, were people who are anti-military. So I must retract my chuckle. Yeah. So, a lot of repeats, guys. In the future, please ask one question if all of you intend on jumping in like you have. So thank you for that. TH, can you please enlighten us on the unknown enemy in Prometheus that in the cloud? That was a cool ship, but I think that was just not meant to be explained, was it?
I'm trying to remember.
Grace. The episode where Sam's on her own.
Yeah, no, that was never meant to be explained. It was just one of, many possible races out there.
Pete Mine, ballpark number. How many alien races have you come up with any future SG shows?
So over the course of the
any future SG shows? I would think 0.
Yeah, I mean, I am not involved in the creation of the 4th series. This is a question for Brad Wright.
Okay.
I'm sure he has all your answers.
Eagle, the revisions device, the memory device. Who had that idea in the writing staff?
That was my idea. It was my episode.
That's prescient.
And that was another episode where it was actually quite dark. The original version was very dark. And I think I have the original pitch somewhere on my blog. But then talking it through with Rob, we came up with kind of like another twist. But originally, I love the idea of this device that allows people to forget or essentially reboots them.
Rewrites their brain.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, it was originally envisioned as a dark episode. Although at the end, there is kind of that bittersweet moment where I want to call him Holling. His name wasn't Holling.
Yeah, Chris Heyerdahl's first episode.
Yeah, and basically asks
tell me about
Sam
her.
Tell me about the wife he no longer remembers.
I loved that ending.
Yeah.
And what Chris Heyerdahl, man, did he go far on that show? Holy cow.
Yeah. Terrific.
Let me see here. Yeah, what do you think about Neuralink? Elon Musk's Neuralink. I think it's terrifying.
Yeah. I'm dubious.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah. Once you unlock someone's brain and it has a Wi-Fi that you can't shut off, I'm not going to be in the first batch. Let me tell you that right now. Let me see. Orville Nation. Who came up with Shepard calling Ronon a Chewie?
That, I believe, was an improv on Joe's part.
Okay. Watcher 652 vids. Are the replicated team SGA-1 actually dead? We didn't see them dead, did we? I think they're talking about are they talking about the team in BL My Sins in This Mortal Coil? I think they died, didn't they?
Yeah. If they're the ones from This Mortal Coil, then yes, they did die.
Yeah. Sorry if I missed that one.
Yeah.
So, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for all of these questions. I had no expectation of that. But in the future, please do submit one so that everyone has a voice. So, Joe, we ran over. I apologize for that, but it means so much to us to have you here moving forward on this journey together. The next time that we have you on, I'll reach out to you for dates. We're going to go right back to Scorched Earth and move forward with Window of Opportunity. Obviously, that's going to be a highlight of everyone's. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for asking me to join. Best of luck with your show. And thanks to the fans. I'll see you guys soon.
Thank you so much, sir. You take care of yourself. I'll be in touch with you.
I'm going to take the dog out now.
Absolutely. You be well. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Joseph Mallozzi, everyone. Joe, thank you again for joining. And everybody out there, thank you so much for watching. I opened up the document for the fan questions, and I realized it was 10 pages long. The show just launched. And I did not expect to have this many. So we're going to have to figure out a means of culling that down. A lot of people asked repeat questions, which was fine for this particular episode, but in the future, please ask one. And moderators, if you guys could make sure to make that point and just make sure that that's what's the case on the end here. Questions for me. Where did the Borg go? The Borg is upstairs in my bedroom now, Tracy. The Stargate characters that are going to be where this Jaffa are out in my hallway. If everyone's interested, at some point I'll do a walk through the house. It's basically a Stargate museum. But the Jaffa is here for the weekend. I may switch him out for Flanagan tomorrow with my next character from Stargate Atlantis. But his helmet is so tall that I risk damaging him, bringing him in and out of rooms. So that's a thing. Raj says, what are your favorite episodes? For SG-1, It's probably Heroes. For Atlantis, it's Sunday. Martin Garrow and I were talking about Sunday when season 1 was in production. So we would chat a lot, and he was telling me about that idea. So in many respects, I felt almost, but not exactly, having been a part of that process while he was talking through developing that episode. So Sunday was really the biggest one for me. And for SGU, it's Epilogue, unquestionably. Denote. Every time I try to use the forms on the website, I'm told they're not working. We should check on this. So what's happening is you're using a mobile device. So when you go to dialthegate.com and you scroll to the bottom to submit questions to the show, you're going to need to be doing that on a PC or a Mac. I don't know when we're going to have a fix for this, but the intent is to have something in place at some point. Until then, you're going to have to do it on a physical computer. A mobile device is not going to work. So you can click on Contact the Show. Right now, you can submit questions to Rob Cooper and Andy Frizzell, because they are going to be our previously recorded guests. And beneath that, you can also submit Stargate trivia as well. And Linda Gategabber, she's helping me organize those. The questions that Joe gave off, I believe. Let me see who that was submitted by, because I did not ask him to provide credit to that person, and I do definitely want to give them credit for that. Plachu. Gesundheit. So yeah, Plachu was the one who submitted, I believe, the questions for that one. And if not, I'll get it. I'll get a caning for sure. But I believe Plachu submitted those questions. Still a first for a lot of things this week. So we're gonna iron things out and get things straightened out. I really appreciate everyone submitting their questions for Joe and the trivia questions as well. So this episode proves that things are working, and that's a good thing. Any other questions for me? So I addressed the issue with the form right now. You can't do it on mobile. Room setup looks great. Brain Shatterer, thank you very much. I worked hard on it. So the trivia questions that will win you these 2 concept art are now on the wall. The concept art from the trivia are now on the wall. Gate Gab, can we get an entire episode on Heroes? I know Terrell hasn't ever watched it, perhaps with one of the writers. My intent going forward here, and Terrell is going to be on later on in this year, my intent moving forward is for commentaries. Some of them will be live. Some of them will probably be pre-recorded, if they're not all pre-recorded. Diana Botsford and I, the novelist, the Stargate novelist, she and I recorded commentaries for a separate show that we were developing years ago called Dial Home. So I've used every combination of dial that you can possibly imagine at this point. But Dial Home was the original idea behind Dialing Home, and it was going to be a podcast. And for Dial Home, we had Alexis Cruz record a commentary for the feature film. We had Catherine Powers, the writer, record a commentary for Emancipation. And we had Jay Acavone record a commentary for The Enemy Within. And we participated with him. And I still have that. So I am more than welcome. I'm more than happy to release that content to all of you at the beginning of the year, so you can get an idea of what the commentaries are going to be like. And they were great commentaries, I have to say. They were fantastic. I wasn't a big fan of Emancipation. And then we sat down with Catherine and we walked through the process together of developing that episode, the Mongol culture, the yurts and everything that went into that. And I went away really respecting that. So that's some content that we'll be releasing. I just have to get Diana's permission and the permission of the people who were involved in those. And they're already involved in the show anyway. So we've essentially got commentaries in the bag. But yes, commentaries are the goal. I would love to have David and Paul sit down and do Sunday. Would love that. Dean Devlin, I'm hoping that, after our conversation with him next week, we'll get him invested in doing a commentary with some of the cast and crew. So I don't want to repeat what's already been done. The commentaries that exist out there now are fine. This is supplementary material. That's the intent of this podcast. Let's see here. That's it. That's all that I have from you guys. So if you like what you've seen, please give us the like button. The YouTube algorithm is very specific. And if you want other Stargate if you want more of this content, pressing that like button will put this episode and others, well, specifically this episode, because you liked this one, in front of other Stargate fans for it to be seen. So that's a huge help, and I do appreciate that. If you want to be around for future episodes when they air live, you can subscribe and click the bell icon. Your device will notify you when we go live. Thank you, everyone, for submitting the questions that you did. This episode was just over the top. Submitted with questions, and I'm blown away. I have no words. Someone's been making fun of me for saying over the moon twice last week. I'm over the moon. So Summer, Keith, Tracy, Ian, you guys are princes and princesses. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. I'm gonna get rolling here. I think that this is good. This is good. Joseph Mallozzi, thank you again, sir. Tony Amendola from earlier today, thank you again. Tomorrow, we have scheduled Joe Flanagan at 12 p.m. Pacific time. Colonel John Shepard right here. So be sure to stick around live to ask your questions. You can go to dialthegate.com and click on the time that's listed on the website, and it will open you up to the corresponding portal YouTube link for that episode. Wyvern Gaming, Brad Ellis and Wesley Walker are going to be joining us at 2 p.m. Pacific time. They're going to be taking your questions regarding their Kickstarter and the upcoming SG-1 role-playing game. The Kickstarter blew out its expectations in like the first 3 hours. They'd met their goal, and they're just hitting stretch goal after stretch goal right now. So this is really exciting, guys. Thank you again for, I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm going to get out of your hair. We already went over in this episode anyway, which is a blessing. Thanks so much to Joe. Thank you all for sticking around. My name is David Reed. This has been Dial the Gate, and tomorrow we'll be back again for more shows. So I'll see you on the other side.